Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Schutz, and I'm the moderator for the Bennington School District. At this time, I'd like to ask the board members to introduce themselves to the public. And Kelly?
Kelly Kennedy.
Ken Swerad.
George Sleeman.
Claude DeLucia.
And just for the public's knowledge, Paul Becker called me up and said he had a family emergency he had to take care of, and Jackie is in California with a grandchild, so that's where the other board members are.
And just to round out the table, of course, our superintendent, Catherine McClure, and the business manager, Rick Pembroke.
Just introducing.
Okay, I know there's not a large crowd here, but there's an interested crowd that came through this terrible weather we have outside rain. I hope we have a good turnout for tomorrow's vote as well. Just a couple of things. I appreciate the effort the parents have been putting in, going on the corner on Friday when it rained and contacting their friends and neighbors to get the vote out. I hope we're able to get that turnout tomorrow to be much larger than the turnout we had at the last, where we lost by 51 votes. I want to thank the teachers. They sent out those information pink cards I received Saturday, asking the people to go out and vote again. So we're seeing a lot more interest, it seems, at this point that people want to get this budget passed. Now, a couple of things before we start about clarity. In this morning's newspaper, there were one letter to the other with two different comments, and I'd just like to explain them. First of all, there was one here about this individual, Bill, mentioned he noticed a new digital message board at MAU replacing the old one. Again, that's MAU budget, that's MAU's property, and we have nothing to do with that. So when MAU got that new sign, BSD, we're two separate boards, two separate budgets completely. The other item mentioned was about the blacktopping that we voted on at the last budget, where it was cut out of the budget for next year, was put in, but we were able to have a fund balance in that account this year, so we were able to get the project done this year. And if any of you were around Molly Stark or behind central office, you'll know how terrible that was back there. I mean, some of the elevation changes were 6 inches or more, so it was really a dangerous situation. So that's why we did that. And then there was a letter to the editor back on Friday where someone asked to vote no, and again, this is America, you can write letters about voting no, but one of the things that wasn't clear here was that they were talking about, who running the SPED budget. Well, in Bennington, we let the supervisory union know how many SPED teachers we need, how many SPED paraprofessionals we need, and then they budget that in the system. There's not two separate budgets here. We allocate so many positions, and they then bill us for those positions during the year. Okay, so it's not something that changed during the budgeting season. That's the way it works, and that's, by the way, that's a state law, right? All the federal, all the SPED money goes to the SVSU.
Correct.
Okay, again, we were on the radio this morning, 8:30. We're on again this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And we're here tonight to answer any questions that people may have in the audience about this budget. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Larry's got to do his deal.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Oh, just to be legal here. The legal voters of Bennington School District are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Firehouse on River Street, Bennington, Vermont, Monday, June the 10th at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to transact the following business from the floor. To conduct an informal hearing on a proposed budget, or Bennington School District budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2013. And one other detail, if you didn't get a booklet or a packet, there are some over there on the table as well as you come in that door. So, back to you, Ken.
Okay, Catherine.
Yes, I'd like to take a few minutes to speak about the educational aspects of the program, the budget for 2014. maybe additional comments afterwards from board members or principals, and then we'll turn the program over for the fiscal aspects, and Rick Pembroke, Chief Financial Officer, will give that portion of the program. I think what we need to remember as we face this budget tomorrow is that elementary education is the foundation of our education, setting the stage for student success at the middle school and the high school. The board members, the principals, and the supervisory union staff have worked very, very hard on a responsible budget right from the beginning, trying to make sure that our students have the resources that they need, the teachers have the resources they need, and that the support for all of our students is well rooted in this proposed budget. They've worked very, very hard to reduce the increase after the last two votes. The major focus of this, however, has been to retain regular education. The board, principals, and SU administrators have worked very, very hard to maintain the regular education effort for our students, which means we're retaining the number of classroom teachers. We are keeping art, music, PE, and library services. All of these specialists, special areas contribute to the well-rounded education for our students. The number of classroom teachers and special educators assist us in making sure that we can respond more quickly to our students' instructional needs in the classroom. We are changing our educational approach over the last years from individualized to more personalized, where intervention is given more quickly if students are not gaining the skills. We need to watch that grow. We also have in this budget a continuation of classroom teachers to student ratios in the lower grades. We are trying to maintain those as they have been the last couple of years, to 18 and 19 in the kindergarten and first grade and some of the second grade classrooms, to ensure that teachers can do those interventions right in the classroom as needed individually with students. We also have special education increases to this budget. I think there's been a lot of publicity about that. However, I want to make sure that everyone is clear that what we've done is reduce the increase. We have not eliminated some of these services. We are seeing not an increase in the number of students with special needs. What we're seeing an increase of is the number of students who have complex special needs. Some of these students have behavioral needs, others separate. We're seeing an increase in the autism spectrum, and that projection of an increase in students on that spectrum is expected over the next few years. And so what we are doing in this budget is supporting classroom teachers and special educators with professional development in these two fields in order that they can be up to date on best practices for these students, and also teams of specialists who would work specifically with autism. That would include a board-certified behavioral analyst as well as additional speech and language and occupational therapy. And so the idea is to have teams that can move between the three buildings to support this rising population. But again, I think we really need to focus on the regular education aspect of this budget, the fact that we're maintaining it, and that it is critical that we have an approved budget. We are at the end of the academic year. That year ends on June 20th. It's a half day for students. We need to be able to confidently assign our teachers and plan for summer programming for students who are eligible for that summer program, as well as our Mosaic program for added instructional opportunity during the summer. Welcome any comments from board members or principals as you wish. Again, we're trying to keep this a short presentation in order that there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers.
Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
Any comments? I'll turn it to Rick, Chief Financial Officer, for the fiscal aspects of the program.
We've seen the majority of these slides before. This one's actually a new one. I went back to what originally drives our budget, which is student enrollment. And as you can see, we've been relatively flat over the last 6 years, but we are seeing a rise in enrollment coming the next couple of years. So this represents an increase of about 20, 25 kids or so, which is part of the reason for the increase that we haven't talked about formally in the last couple of weeks. We talked about it at the original budget time at town meeting time, but I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention as well. This is a slide we've seen before. Obviously, it's been adjusted based on the proposed budget that's in front of the voters tomorrow. And you can now see the average increase over the last 5 years is at 3.47. We kept it level, we dropped it, slight increase, and then a couple of increases the last couple of years. But if you average that out over the term, it's at an increase of 3.47 on average. This is a slide that everybody seems to like as far as pictorial is concerned. Shows all the districts in the SVSU. This blue line here is an anticipated state average once all the budgets are set at 13,560. The SVSU average is looking to be at 12,630. With this budget, BSC is at 11,787. It's below both the state average and our local surrounding districts as well, with the exception of Woodford, which has an anomaly of the forest land up there, which brings down their cost per pupil. So you can see that BSD is very reasonable when compared to the region as well as the state on its cost per pupil. The tax rate, and you have to remember there's a lot of variables that go into the formula for the tax rate. Again, the school board worked very hard during this very difficult economic time of 2010 to 2012 to keep that as level as possible. We have seen increases this year as well as projected increase next year. We're looking at an increase of about 5.3 cents on the tax rate. That's a blended rate with Mount Anthony. I won't get into that complication tonight, but that's the tax that the people will pay. And what you need to realize is the state raised the baseline tax by 5 cents, which is a big driver in this tax rate. But again, if you look at over time, that tax increase is an average of 4.05%. The last one that most people really want to know, and this is prior to income sensitivity adjustments. So if you're earning less than $92,000 and there's tiers, I think $78,000 and $42,000 or $48,000. So you would pay less than these numbers, but if there's no income sensitivity, $100,000 house will go up $54.30, $300,000 is $162.90, and you can extrapolate anywhere in between. That's my very quick. Be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple.
Yes, yes, sir. Oh, sir, sir. Just
Know something about statistics.
Sir.
School district.
Sir, would you just step up to the microphone because we're recording? Oh. Thank you.
And name.
And your name, please.
My name is Bill Hartz. Thank you, by the way, for your comments. I walked in right in time. The dollar amount for the Bennington grade school, the Bennington school district, excuse me, is that lower than average based on the pupils or just statistically? Because I don't see a pupil per those, and I'm just wondering why.
You talking this one?
Yes.
Okay. Can you rephrase your question again?
Okay.
This is the cost per pupil for each district.
How many pupils does it represent in each one? Because that's going to affect the percentage rate.
Mount Anthony is 1,700, BSD is 825, North Bennington is 120, Powell is 265, Shasberry is 240, Woodford is 28.
So proportionally, it's not really that far apart.
Well, this is proportionally,
Yeah, okay.
in my definition, I mean,
Okay.
the budgets divided by their pupils is $11,700 a
Using
pupil.
the baseline number?
What's that?
Using like the state baseline number or the actual budget that you're proposing?
The actual budget for each district based on the actual pupils in each district.
Okay. Each individual district's budget,
Correct.
so they're all separate. Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
Yep.
Other questions? Yes, sir. You mind stepping up to the mic and stating your name, please?
Hi, my name is Chris Murphy. Rick, just to make sure I understand those points, let's say a $200,000 house, that means the taxes will only go up less than $10 a month? And does that break down to less than a quarter a day? Is that right? Was that what that breaks down to?
You're going to ask me to do that math in my head?
Well, I already did it, and I just want to make sure that it's correct.
Yes, you're right.
Because it strikes me that there's not much at all you can buy in this world for less than a quarter a day, and it seems to me a very small price to pay to properly fund our elementary schools, to help bring this community back up to where we all believe it should be. So just want to make sure I had that math correct.
Yes, you
Thank
do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Mulhern, resident of Bennington. I wanted to come before the board today to really ask them how we can go from proposing such a large increase at the beginning of this process for what you felt was appropriate for our educational system to reduce it down to this level. Because I, for one, find it disturbing that we had that kind of flexibility. Yet everyone's statement on this document says that you all feel this is going to appropriately support our educational system. And I have a real problem with such a difference being cut out of the budget at a cost of an average of $22 per household, roughly if it's a $150,000 home, how we can come to this level. Because I, for one, unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to work as well as the BSD board feels it will, unfortunately. And that is because I see and am in the trenches every day to witness the steps we need to take. And it is very disturbing how you feel that this document, this budget, is now going to support all the children in the educational system. And to be honest, there's also another issue about the meeting time here tonight. I thought it was warned at a different time. Did something happen and cause that change?
Selectmen have preference. This is their meeting place, and we needed a large place that was good for the taxpayers. So we had to move our meeting earlier so that the selectmen will have their normal spot.
It's also practice to have your hearing in the same location as the voting.
Okay, so I still don't understand why that wasn't worked out, before it was warned.
It was amended at their board meeting, or the regular board meeting, and warned as an amendment to the time and posted.
Well, I guess a lot of the community didn't get that message because a lot of individuals I spoke to did not realize of the change. So again, it's just that communication piece. Luckily enough, the BSD has had parents come forward in support of the budget and has had a big rallying behind them and underneath them to support the educational budget. And again, if it wasn't for their efforts, I don't feel that you would have received as much support as you have right now. And it's unfortunate because I do support our educational system. I support what is right for our students. I support art and gym and all kinds of after-school programs. I think it's appropriate. However, I'd like to ask Rick a question. Can you tell me where that 18% increase is going in special education? Because it's my knowledge that it's going to pre-K and not exactly that large of a percentage to our regular, highly functioning, regular, inclusive students. If I can phrase that better.
Some of it's going to pre-K. Unfortunately, I left in a haste and didn't bring my computer with me, so I'm going to have to go by memory because I don't have the detailed budget in front of me. We're having a large influx of students with high needs in the pre-K program as well, so a large portion of that's going there. There's some of it's going to special ed admin, and then a significant portion is going to what we call the resource room, which is the teachers and paras in the classrooms.
You consider the resource room being paras and educators in the classroom? Is that what I just heard?
No.
Is that what, I'm sorry, I didn't understand it.
I think I can explain. We say resource room, but it doesn't mean that it's restricted to that room alone. It's a term that's used for the district assessment.
Right. It's a special ed services that are delivered in the buildings is probably a better way to say it.
Okay, you can't give me a percentage of what percentage of that 18% is going to pre-K?
I could. I don't have the detail. Anybody have the detail with
Karen,
them? I didn't bring mine. I left in a hurry. Didn't bring my computer with me.
Yep, here you go. Well,
Sorry. Oh, okay.
But these mics don't amplify. I think they're just for the television.
yeah, these mics are for the broadcasting.
So of the $650,000 increase, $377,000 or 13.82% is going into the sped services in the buildings.
In the buildings themselves, not public pre-K?
No.
Okay, so you're saying that,
The public pre-K is $186,180.
do we know specifically what those services for? Have you identified that as training?
No,
Is
I
that what you
believe-
said, or just,
I believe Karen's here, but if she can come up, I believe it's going to deliver services to high-need students that are coming into the district. You want to come up, Karen?
We can't hear back here, so I can hear the question. So if when people speak here, it would be helpful if you could turn this way because we
I'm
can't
hoping
hear.
you hear me up there.
The
If you answer a question, I gotta know what.
question is the pre-K.
Question was pre-K. If, I understand the budget has been increased 18% in special ed. What I was wondering is the percentage of that, what percentage of that goes to public pre-K versus what goes out into the schools for regular special education?
Regular special education as
Can you
far as.
step up, Karen?
Well, for what he considers resource room?
So ask me again. I'm sorry, I have to understand your question.
Okay. What I'm trying to determine is what percentage of the increase for special education that's been put
I
forth
just told you.
is going towards assisting special educators and paraprofessionals in providing services and support to high-functioning students included in the regular classroom. So I'm trying to find out what that percentage is of that increase.
150 as to 650,
Yeah,
so it's less than 1/4%, right?
right. Right.
Okay,
That would be my estimate.
And of that, from what I understand, that has just been said, that's going to provide a lot of services to students coming in to our public schools, as opposed to just supporting those that currently exist, is to also support those coming in, correct?
We have a very large number of students coming in that have very complex disabilities. And so we needed to increase our staff in order to meet the needs of this large number of children coming in. It's about 60% from where we are today by September in children with complex disabilities. So we needed to increase our staff to be able to meet the needs of these children appropriately.
Gotcha.
So that's that's what's
That's-
driving the AAA largest increase. Does that help?
It does. I'm just really getting down to what percentage of all of these increases is really going to be applied to those special needs students that are currently struggling with, within their educational system. Because it tends to be the high-functioning ones. It tends to be those that are there every day and not necessarily, needing extensive support, but just everyday support to access our educational program.
And what you know is that from all of your experiences is that giving the most comprehensive services you can at the earliest ages helps those children to be successful, to potentially reduce the need of services. Can you hear me back there? Reduce the need of services as they get into the public system. And because we're just, their wiring, their neurological system is malleable, we need to give them as much as possible so that they can achieve and be successful in the mainstream environment at that early age.
I do understand that, and I do agree with that in supporting early intervention. However, I also agree with supporting all of the parents that have come forward back, as far back as December, that have come to the boards and said, this isn't working, we need to change it, and we're told it's going to be changed, but it's very difficult to see it reflected in the budget. And this is something that I really want to clarify so that I, as a parent of two, would know exactly if the funds are available to support my two students effectively. Because, I understand we have all this influx, and I understand we have all this supporting early ed, but I really also want to make sure that we support those students that are in the regular classrooms every single day effectively. Because that's what parents have been bringing forward.
Rick?
And the answer is yes. Of that increase, the part that has been reduced was support for improvements, enhancements they've been called, but improvements to extend our support to one of the what I call categorical resource room. All the other increases in this special education budget are to ensure free and appropriate education for all of those students and to provide professional development and a team of specialists in the area of autism that will work with all three schools. So those supports that parents had discussed with me personally in a meeting, as well as had expressed to the boards, are still in there. The piece that's been reduced is one administrative position called a building facilitator, and the other that was a reduction was, in fact, this additional improvement or extension of our support for a categorical resource room. That categorical resource room is still being funded at level funded. It's just not part of the increased. But the answer to your question is yes, and we provide good support for all of our students. I think I will take a stab at the question about why from 19 to be able to lower it. There's a lot of factors involved in that. I think we've discussed previously some of these as far as having a little bit more information about, or more accurate information after the first budget was proposed about increases in things like health insurance. But what really is at stake here is a failed budget. And when there is a failed budget, and there is not a clear indication of why that budget's failed, a responsible board who has always, and I will say this, always, with their principals and their SU administrators, tried to be fiscally responsible and yet meet the needs of our students. They did that with the first budget. Those were items that we felt would help improve and provide more support and resources for increasing student achievement for all of our students. The vote went down. The responsible thing is to look at that budget and see what could be reduced in order to bring that to a level that we hoped would be approved, and it failed a second time. So that's why you're seeing those increases, but I want to assure you that we are maintaining our regular education for all of our students, and we are maintaining that additional support in the areas of concern in special education. Thank you.
Rick, now you mentioned that it's going to be basically 20% for Tripoli and the rest goes to the general population, sped, right? 150 versus 650. Okay, that was the main question. Okay.
Yep.
See if there's any more.
And the consequences, again, just looking at the numbers, this year's budget is 11.3 million. If you cut 13%, which means if this budget goes down, we go into that austerity budget, we'll be going with a budget about $9.8 million. And we don't have a choice in this, folks, until we have approval. And so that means all these notices of 8 classroom teachers, 12 sped teachers, would have to go by the wayside, because this is where our starting point would be, 9.8 million, and then we'd work from there. So anybody who's saying, well, because they cut X amount of money out of SPED, or they cut it out of blacktop or whatever, I don't think they should have cut the budget, I'm gonna vote against it. That's your prerogative, I'm not saying you can't do that, but the consequences are a budget of 9.8, which I can go back to probably 2005, that was the budget back then, and since then, we've had increases in gasoline, health insurance, salaries, so I mean, the numbers, or bodies in the building have to be really reduced, which means we're gonna get 25, 28 kids in a classroom, less teachers, less enrichment programs, it would be devastating, it really would be. And I mean, I think with this budget of putting 650 into SPED and 500,000, half a million into the general population, and Triple E getting 150,000, I think is quite fair. And about cuts, everybody has the dream budget. We ask the administrators to come in and give us their best, and then we say, okay, this sounds pretty good, but then the taxpayers come up to the election booth and say, no, that's too much. And then we cut a little bit more and say, okay, how about, and they said no again. So this is the next time, we have to, I mean, I know a few people stand up and say, give them back the same budget or increase it. Well, in your heart, you know that's not the problem. You know, it's not too low. Too high is the problem. That's it. I don't want to say any more, but we want the best for the kids, and again, if this one doesn't go, it's not going to be a very good situation for the Bennington School District. Okay, Larry, ask any specific questions anybody has, anything else?
Please, any specifics, please step up to the microphone if you would. State your name.
Ed Letourneau. This is a generic question and not specifically related to an item in the budget, but it appears to me that Bennington has somewhere around 20 or 21% of the kids in special ed. And I've seen numbers for other communities in Vermont that are only running 8 and 9 and 10%. And I'm trying to understand, why is it double in Bennington?
It is not double in Bennington. Our numbers right now are about 17%, and that's lower than the state average and the national average. So we're working hard on what's called exit and entry criteria. We still are responsible under the federal guidelines, and because we care about all of our children to make sure that they're getting what they need and a free and appropriate education is provided.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, step right up, please.
My name is Tara Scott. I basically then want to know of the, was it about 30% increase originally for SPED? What was the original that it went down to 18%? Of the 19% budget,
Yeah,
what was the percentage of special education increase?
I think it was about 30%.
So it went from 30 to 18. Are you saying?
19.65.
Or 19.65.
So 20, 30 to
Yeah.
20.
Are you saying that that's just a BSD facilitator? And what did you say were the cuts?
And you can obviously. One of the major cuts was a program to add support to our categorical resource room. One of those programs, the facilitator, and there were some cuts in contracted service, which included professional development and time for substitutes to be used for professional development. We also have some other funding that could be used for that. So my point was, in answering the question originally, was the support for the population of students that parents were concerned about, and we are as well, is still there.
I guess I would just say that, and to you, Ken, when you're commenting about the alternative to not passing this budget would be to go to 87%. But if the voters say no, will you all come back and try to reduce it from 9.92 to something even less?
I would, because that, to me, that's what the taxpayers are telling us to do. They're not saying increase it for sure, to
So
me.
you would decrease it again?
No.
I would decrease the budget more, further.
Right. Which is only the point to the taxpayer, to the parents in the district, that that's only saying that if you're going to decrease it further, what you're standing on now at 9.92 is that this would really help. You did the same thing at 19, you did the same thing at 14, you did the same thing at 9. This is what we really need. If what we really needed was 19, you have to understand that taxpayers, that parents, that anybody interested in making sure their kids get what they need are not potentially going to get what they need. Reducing it by half, even if it's an increase. If you needed a bigger increase, if you needed a 30% increase, and you're taking 18, that's 12% less than you thought you really needed. So that's what parents, that's what taxpayers, that's what they're saying. So as a board member, I would think the responsibility would have been to say, why are people saying no? It's not always about, I don't want my taxes to go up. I know I would say no because I don't want the services to be reduced. So much so that maybe the board should go back and figure out, are more people upset that there's been a reduction than they are if there was just, I know things aren't going well in the district. I'm a parent of a child in the district, of 2 children in this SVSU. And I've had my own problems this year, and I've brought some of them to the table, to the board. I've spoken with Catherine numerous times about many issues that are going on in the district. So as a parent, I am saying, parent groups that have formed to say, let's get this budget passed, this should have happened at 19%, because we need the increases. So I'm disappointed that we slashed it in half, and we're going to have half of the things we thought we really needed.
Well, Governor Shumlin, his initial, when as legislator, he said that the budget should be flat this year. He said the taxpayers have been brutalized and it's time to just have a level funded. So imagine if we would have listened to the governor, and that means we would have made a lot of cuts completely.
Well,
So,
in
you
many
know.
districts where they didn't try to cut years prior, maybe there should have been a flat cut or a flat budget. In districts that didn't make reductions when they maybe shouldn't have made reductions, and now we're in a case where we need the increases. And if your legal fees go up, because parents have to go to due process for IEPs not being followed, what will that increase your budget? Is there a line item that is in the budget right now for legal fees?
Usually there is a line item for legal fees, yeah.
So did that get increased from last year?
It's part of the SU
It's the
assessment.
SU.
It's part of your SU assessment.
Okay.
Was it an increase from last year?
It's a small.
Or did that get flat funded?
I don't believe it was. I think that was level funded.
So I know there's parents whose IEPs of their children are not being followed right now. And if they all go to due process, that's going to cost the district a lot more than a 9% increase in, we went from 68, I think, to 54, so we saved everyone $14. I don't know if it's going to cost more than that.
Yes, sir.
I am Chris Murphy. Yes, the fact that it was voted down twice, the fact there are so many cuts is terribly disappointing, to me at least. Now is not the time, in my mind, to dicker about this. Now is 0 hour. Now we have 10 more days to get a budget passed, where all these things you just talked about that we're missing, we'll be missing those and a whole lot more. Absolutely, we need to examine, as parents, as community members, as a board, we need to examine why we're in this predicament we're in right now closely. We need to do the full postmortem and figure out how we avoid being in this position again. But now absolutely is not the time to continue to take pot shots at what we have, because it's either pass it now, and is it correct to say it's less than a 10% increase now?
9.9.
Thank you. And is it correct to say that more than $1 million have been cut since it was proposed on town meeting day?
Yep.
That's what we need to consider. We need to rally behind this budget now, and after tomorrow, after it passes, then we start to pick it apart. Then, frankly, we hold the board accountable. We hold ourselves accountable as community members. We figure out what to do to avoid this situation ever again. But for right now, we all need to rally behind this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tim Marr, Bennington resident. My kids are graduating from college. They got a great education through the Bennington schools all the way through. So I thank the board for the work they've done. And just the percentage of 9.9 keeps throwing around. And if you look at this assessment, it's really only 4% increase in your education property tax rate of that 54.30 per 1,000. And so I think it's, and at first, Vermont's kind of confusing. It's a great place to live, but when you get the education property tax in March, people can't figure it out. All they saw was that 19%, and that is not anywhere near what the tax rate goes up. But it wasn't clear, so I don't know in future years if there's a way to get that message out. I would certainly, along with Chris and some of the other people from the group that formed, try to get the word out on what it actually means in terms of your costs, because that's what people are looking at. And it's unfortunate due to the funding things that the budget goes up so much, but you know, when the funding sources dry up, what are you going to do? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other questions or comments? Anything else? The board?
Ken, get out the vote tomorrow.
You have to say?
Sure. Just in closing, I'm hoping for a greater turnout, voter turnout tomorrow, and of course, as superintendent of schools, I would ask you to support it. Ken?
Yes, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion to adjourn, a second? Okay, second, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And let's all come out, whether you vote yes or no, but let's get your friends, everybody, as many as possible. Not 1,000, but, you know, several thousand.
So, just for further information, the legal voters of Bennington are hereby warned to meet at the firehouse on Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the evening to transition by Australian ballot. Thank you.
These are the resources we're putting towards.
Well, these are